I'm Dave Atkinson with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and I'll introduce some of these folks behind me here in just a minute. Let me start out by mentioning our concerns about Senate Bill 151. It's passed the Senate. It would require the Public Service Commission to expand from 3 to 7 members and require that they be elected rather than appointed by the governor. This legislation is based on the theory that electing the members of the Public Service Commission would somehow result in lower electric rates. From the perspective of Kentucky's business community, SB 151 is a solution in search of a problem. The Public Service Commission has been doing a good job of holding down rates. The U.S. Energy Information Administration tracks utility costs in all states and reports Kentucky already has among the lowest rates in the country. In fact, the Kentucky Public Service Commission notes that the 12 states which elect their Public Service Commissioners all have higher rates than Kentucky. Kentucky has the second lowest electric rates for industrial customers in the nation, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. The Kentucky Chamber is steadfast in our opposition to the concept of electing Public Service Commissioners. Our member companies, no matter whether it's an aluminum manufacturer in western Kentucky or a hardware store on Main Street, they depend on consistent utility prices to survive. We firmly believe that the election of public service officials will not only increase utility rates in Kentucky, but it will bring massive instability and inconsistency in Kentucky's energy market, which will result in net job losses in our state. It is also important to note that elected officials in Kentucky already play a significant role in the PSC. PSC commissioners are currently appointed by the governor and must be confirmed by the Kentucky Senate. And under state law, the Kentucky Attorney General participates as a consumer advocate in utility rate cases to provide legal representation for the people who pay utility bills. So from our perspective, there are already sufficient checks and balances in the current process. Given these facts, it is our view that Senate Bill 151 will only insert politics in the regulation of utility rates. Decisions on utility rates should be based on the evidence related to the utility's cost. Elections could create an environment in which public service commissioners running for re-election could be influenced more by political contributions and out-of-state interests than the evidence in utility cases. If this bill passes, it will be open season for political contributions, and businesses across Kentucky will have no option but to play in that arena. In fact, election-related scandals involving public service commissioners in Tennessee caused the legislature to move about 10 years ago from an elected to an appointed commission. Similar campaign financing controversies involving utility regulators have emerged in New Mexico and Montana. The potential for problems could lead to appeals of PSC decisions in court and regulatory uncertainty, dragging out cases, which is not good for business in Kentucky. Another consideration is that many Kentuckians live in communities where the electric company is owned by the local government and not subject to PSC oversight. For example, here in Frankfort and in my home community of Owensboro. That means many Kentuckians would be voting for someone who doesn't even regulate their electric rates. The bottom line for the business community is clear. The current system is working. Why interject politics and uncertainty into a process that is producing low utility rates compared with the rest of the country? The focus at the PSC should be on fairness and low utility costs, not politics and campaign contributions. And during this recession, why create 7 high-paying jobs for politicians? I'd like to recognize those who are standing with me in opposition to this bill. I'm proud to be joined by several of our local chambers. Behind me, Jody Wasmer with the Owensboro Chamber of Commerce, Carmen Hickerson with Greater Louisville, Inc., Bob Quick with Commerce Lexington, Matt Davis with the Northern Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and the Kentucky Industry Utilities Customers, KIUC, which is an organization, a band of utility customers here in the state. I would also like to welcome Mike Baker, Executive Director of the Kentucky Aluminum Network. There's Mike right there. Good. And Bill Bissett with the Kentucky Coal Association. So at this time, I'd like to call on my friend and colleague, Greg Higdon, former state senator, now president of the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers, for his comments. Greg?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dave. I think you hit all the points, and so it's going to help me. You may wonder why the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers are here this morning. I don't know how many of you know it or not, but manufacturing leads the gross domestic product for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's about $27 to $28 billion annually. It contributes about 17.5 points to the GDP for Kentucky, and that's fantastic. It leads the state. The next biggest thing is government that does that. So we have a major interest in all of the issues that come forth. One of the things I learned in my first year as president of CAM was we were doing executive briefings, Steve, across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We found that energy had risen and maybe eclipsed healthcare as a concern for manufacturers in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. That's major. Energy costs continue to rise, and that's major. CAM has and will continue to collaborate with policymakers to protect and create a manufacturing-friendly environment in Kentucky that allows manufacturers to compete not only domestically but globally to retain the manufacturing jobs we have in Kentucky today and build a climate for the growth of more good-paying jobs in this state. Why does CAM oppose Senate Bill 151? The legislation is bad for Kentucky's manufacturers and bad for Kentucky's economic development efforts. The current appointed PSC operates in a quasi-judicial environment that is somewhat removed from politics. As I said in front of the committee the other day, my wife and I are married, and we get political with each other on occasion, if you might imagine. It can be influenced by a lot of other things if we change that, thereby creating a more unreliable, stable source as we now have, even despite some of its flaws. Electing various appointed members of the Public Service Commission will increase the political environment into the rate-making process, which is not likely to yield positive results for Kentucky's manufacturing community. Instead of over-politicizing the process, we need to focus on real solutions, expanding our weatherization and energy efficiency efforts for the long term, and enhancing the Attorney General's ability to provide additional expertise in rate-making cases. Having an elected PSC will in many instances lead to instability in the rate-setting process. I say that strongly, for sure it could, which will cause an increase of overhead costs for manufacturers, leading to the creation of a more economic uncertainty when our economy least can afford it. That's the other thing that I heard in traveling the Commonwealth of Kentucky this last year from manufacturers. The uncertainty on the federal level has really got us bogged down. Kentucky's utility customers have historically enjoyed a competitive cost and stability advantage relative to other states, including those with elected public service commissions. We, right now, are second in the nation. We have vacillated for years ago. When I first came to Frankfort, we led the nation in energy costs. We were more efficient. It was lower. It helped our economic development. I suppose that's why we've got such a large manufacturing base in the Commonwealth. The bottom line on this is any major policy change within the Commonwealth of Kentucky needs to be vetted, studied, and looked at. Not done in as quick a fashion as right now our General Assembly is taking a look at. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions as we proceed through. Dave?
Thanks very much, Greg. It's really an honor to introduce this next guy because he and I don't have the opportunity to stand at the same podium every day. And that's Tom Jarrell with the Kentucky Resources Council. Tom wrote a wonderful piece in the Courier-Journal this morning in opposition, and so I'm sure we'll make some of those points this morning. And at the end of his remarks, he'll lead us in a chorus of Kumbaya.
This is a somewhat unusual coalition here. I'm Tom Fitzgerald. I have the privilege of being the director of the Kentucky Resources Council since 1984. And many of you know we provide free legal and technical assistance to low-income individuals, to environmental and community groups, and on occasion to local governments on a range of environmental issues, as well as utility and energy policy issues. There is a problem in the Commonwealth, and the problem is, being the 48th poorest state in the nation, we have a number of our brothers and sisters who are spending upwards of 25 to 30 to 40% of their disposable monthly income just to keep the lights on and just to keep warm in the winter. We don't do enough, and we need to do more, and I appreciate the sentiment from some of the senators suggesting that we need to do more to address the poverty costs and the social implications of rising utility rates. If I had any reason, after looking at the experiences of the 13 states that do elect public utility commissioners, to believe that the direct election of commissioners would result in lower rates or more reliable service or more ratepayer protection for the average residential ratepayer from excessive utility earnings, then I would be holding a different press conference to support the bill. Unfortunately, there is no evidence that suggests that states with elected public utility commissions have lower rates than those with appointed commissioners, nor that elected public utility commissioners are more responsive to the needs of the average residential ratepayer. In fact, the evidence suggests to the contrary. A 1984 study in the Yale Journal of Regulation entitled "Electing Regulators, the Case for Public Utility Commissioners" found that the evidence does not support the proposition that the election of public utility commissioners leads to lower rates. In fact, it found that the elected commissioner may not support policies that are in the interest of small ratepayers. KRC is also very concerned, after reviewing the experiences of the states that elect commissioners, that there is, as David mentioned, a real potential for special interests and regulated utilities and industries to focus their campaign contributions in a manner that would affect the policies and the decisions of the elected commission in a way that would not favor the average ratepayer. A 2005 University of California, Berkeley study raised the issue, does private money buy public policy? And in studying the telecommunications industry, it found that in contrast to much of the literature on campaign contributions to general elected offices, that there is a significant effect of private money on regulatory outcomes. Experiences in Oklahoma, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, Montana, and the Supreme Court decision of Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, which opened the floodgates to unlimited corporate spending on election campaigns, raised serious concerns with making the office of Public Service Commissioner an elective office. The election scandal-plagued history of our neighbors to the south in Tennessee led that state to repeal its elected commissioners and replace them in 1996 with an appointed Tennessee Regulatory Authority. For each and all of these reasons, KRC believes that further politicizing the Office of Public Service Commissioner will not benefit the average ratepayer, and that is why we oppose the bill and ask the House membership and House leadership to do likewise. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. I think that shows the breadth of this coalition that is in opposition to Senate Bill 151. I'd now like to introduce Mike Manchin with KAED, the Kentucky Association of Economic Developers. They're the folks across the state who wake up every morning and go to bed every night trying to figure out how to attract more jobs to Kentucky and create new business opportunities in the state of Kentucky. So Mike, would you come and speak for your membership?
Thank you, Dave. I want to echo the comments of David, Greg, and Tom and tell you that the Kentucky Association for Economic Development strongly opposes Senate Bill 151. As Dave said, our association represents local economic development professionals and organizations that not only help existing Kentucky businesses grow, but we are also tasked with recruiting new businesses into Kentucky. We have a lot of obstacles in our state that we have to overcome in recruiting. Low educational attainment, the fact that we're not a right-to-work state, etc. But one of our major selling points, especially to industrial clients, is our low cost of energy. And believe me, when we go on client calls around the country to manufacturers, that is a topic that they want to talk about and what appeals to them, makes Kentucky appealing to them. We've been able to maintain the strong manufacturing base that Greg referenced because our energy rates have been affordable and stable historically. The manufacturing base that generates enough of a stable demand in energy that many energy providers can then turn around and offer even lower residential rates. As we've said, if we elect PSC commissioners, we open the process to political influences that could adversely affect our existing industries as well. As an example, Kentucky companies manufacture approximately 1/3 of all the aluminum in the United States. We lead the nation in aluminum production. A manufacturing process that is extremely energy intensive. A simple 1 cent increase in the cost of energy to these manufacturers could mean millions of dollars in additional operating costs and could jeopardize their ability to continue to successfully operate in the state, costing us even more in lost jobs and tax revenue. David, Greg, and Tom have done a great job talking about the political influences and what can happen there. I will remind you also that there's a concept out there called site selection when a company is looking. It is not site selection. It's actually a site elimination process. Companies outside of Kentucky have so many opportunities available to them. They're looking for a reason to eliminate you. Uncertainty and instability and energy cost is a very big reason. So we join with the folks up here in opposing Senate Bill 151. Be happy to answer any questions as we proceed. David, thank you.